Great, thank you for coming in. Welcome along to the Group X Room, sponsored by Les Mills. I'm Carl McCartney. I'm currently Global Sales Enablement Director for Les Mills. We've worked in the UK market and a number of different other markets around the world, looking at how we engage with members and how we can really best facilitate long-term usage. So today's session is about how to turn members into what we call MVPs, or your most valuable participants. So I'm going to share with you a few things. Firstly, this presentation is about the latest research that we've conducted with two of our key partners. So with 4 global and Raw fitness partners in the US, we surveyed 2.6 million member journeys and looked at what was most effective at both attracting and retaining members for the long term. And today I'm going to share with you some of those results. Today I'm going to share with you some of the best practice to take away and how you can really engage in terms of your members. So rather than me just presenting on the fly, let's make this really relevant to the people that are in the room. So let's make it a workshop rather than a presentation. So we did meet before. Where are you from? What club do you represent? And
at the moment, I'm with Condition Gym in Leeds.
Okay.
So a little bit of travel, but I'm from New Zealand initially.
Okay.
So my previous role was management of a personal training studio.
Okay.
So we worked in one-on-one primarily, and then added in group fitness, whereas this one's a bit more of a mixture, one-to-one, group fitness, commercial gym membership model.
Okay. Great. Great. So there's some great stuff here that we've got for today that can hopefully take away for you guys. Who's going first?
We're from Bury St Edmunds,
Yep.
Morton Hall Health Club.
Yes.
We've got a range of facilities like tennis courts, squash courts, gym, ladies' gym, classes, personal training, so it's a mixture as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you. That helps.
So Lucy's the gym manager, so
Yeah.
I think you're going to take lots away from us.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So we can definitely relate this specifically to, I know Morton Hall really well. I've been there a few times. I'm not far. I'm only down the road. I'm only in Chelmsford. So from Bury St Edmunds to Chelmsford is not too far. So hopefully there's some stuff here that we can take away, particularly towards the end. But as you know, or as you may not know, Les Mills is a global company. We work with 22,000 clubs around the world. We work with 100,000 instructors, around 7 million workouts every week. But one of the things that we found is that there is a real lack of industry data about what members are actually doing, how long they're staying for, what they engage with, and what some of the behaviours are that attract and retain those members to clubs. So this report for us was really important so that we could start to deliver some of the latest statistics, some of the latest information to club owners so it can help shape your strategy on how to get members engaged. So what is an MVP? So there's a link that I can share with you for that report. But in terms of the story, I've already given you some of the information in advance. When we talk to many of our club partners around the world, one of the biggest things we get asked for is what's the latest data, what's the latest industry trends, what's happening in the industry in terms of exercise behaviour for members and participants. So we commissioned this report, as I said, with 4 global and Raw partners and looked at a select number of operators. So around about 1,300 operators across the UK and US, and really analysed their data. We got into their bookings, their member usage, and as I said before, 2.6 million member journeys were analysed to look at what's really attracting and keeping people engaged with exercise. And we covered some of the high-level stats in that video. But I'd love to share with you today how you can make this applicable to your club. So first up, let's start with what every club operator is facing right now, club economics. In terms of making an operation more profitable or looking at a fitness as a business, here are the 5 jigsaw pieces that most operators will fall back on. First thing, cut costs. When it comes down to creating profit, the easiest thing is strip the cost out of the business, increase revenue, and your margin will increase. And most clubs are already pretty lean. The pandemic has seen us literally strip back on many of the operational structures with many clubs. And making further cuts can weaken the foundation, and it undermines potential for sustainable growth. In particular, when we look at things like taking services away, reducing instructor pay, taking classes off the schedule, how do you really make this as profitable as you possibly can? The opposite of that is many operators look to increase prices. So it's possible to charge more, but it's really tough to do in a challenging economic climate, and it may cost you members. The only way you can really increase prices with authenticity and integrity is if you offer additional value to the members, i.e. they're gaining value out of the membership and looking to pay more. With a lot of the operators that we speak to, depending on the segment, we can share some of the benchmarking in terms of pricing, but what we are finding is that consumers are willing to pay more if they see value in the membership. So whereas in the past, many operators were struggling to get above the 49, 50, 60 pounds a month mark, there are many operators out there charging 150, 200 pounds a month, and the membership is booming because they're creating real value, real authenticity within the brand, and this enables you to manage the economics better. Third thing, if you're going to increase prices, you can create new products and services. It's definitely feasible, but it can be resource heavy, and it remains challenging when members are more price sensitive. So a lot of the operators that we speak to say, we're going to launch this new product, we're going to launch this new service. And whilst on the surface, launching a new product or service seems like a long-term sustainable growth strategy, in most cases, that new service will launch well and then die off over a period of time. So you've got to maintain and sustain that product or service within your club. You can always acquire new members. It requires more marketing spend. You can lose the money if the cost of acquiring those members increases, and it also exceeds their lifetime value. So when we look at some of the industry data right now, we look at the churn rate or retention rate of many of the members that are out there, many operators are finding that whilst they're attracting new members, they're finding it really difficult to retain and keep them, and the lifetime value, if that decreases, it doesn't become a long-term profitable goal. And last thing is boosting retention. The age-old industry challenge. Now, I'm going to show my age. I've worked in the UK fitness industry and global industry for over 30 years now, and retention has always been the biggest challenge. Every operator always says it. We're great at attracting and joining new members, but retaining them in the long term becomes a real challenge. It's the most achievable out of the 5 for club managers, and it brings additional benefits. However, it's really difficult to retain them unless you build loyalty within the club. Loyal members will refer more, will bring new members into the club, and they'll stay for longer. So what we'll talk about today is some of the research findings that we have that will enable you to boost retention whilst also considering the other 4 club economics. This is a really interesting slide for me when we look at how many of the most successful operators are maximising their floor space. So if you're looking here, if we take this slide and think back 10 years ago, even pre-pandemic, this section, the cardio section, would have been 2 or 3 times the size of this. 4 meters squared now for cardio is about the right space. Many operators are taking out treadmills, stair climbers, cross trainers, bikes, recumbent bikes, and replacing them with the functional gym. But from our research and our findings, we found that group training, if it's built well with the right classes, with the right product, with the right instructors in space, can be the most profitable area of your club, because you can serve more members in a short space of time whilst maximising the space without the need for equipment. Many operators out there are increasing their functional gym, which is amazing. It's great in terms of the space, the layout, and utilisation of equipment. But unless there's strong programming or strong personal training in that space, it becomes underutilised. And similarly here as well, the CrossFit style, high rock style spaces, whilst are very, very popular in terms of a certain percentage of membership, it can be a space that you create that isn't overutilised. So when we think about group training, how do you maximise that space? How do you get more people involved in that area? How do you offer a product that works? Here's the key findings from the survey. The first up, in terms of our MVP effect, 53% of MVPs are willing to pay more for a gym membership that offers the activity that they're looking for. I can send you all these slides as well, by the way, so don't worry. I can send you everything. There's nothing up here that is confidential. We can take pictures, but I'll send you everything afterwards. This is really, really important. We speak to many operators out there. There's a real sensitivity around price increase and charging more for a membership, but we know that half of the members are willing to pay more if an activity is provided they're looking for, if they see value in the membership. So how do you create that value? MVPs will stay longer with their club, 39% longer than other members. So that lifetime value suddenly increases. That 39% increase is extremely important. When we think about the average length of membership for most clubs right now, around about 10 months, if you can increase that by 40%, that's a significant lift in terms of that lifetime value. MVPs are 88% more likely to still be active after 12 months than other members. So we know the age-old problem of people join, they attend for the first 3 months, they sustain their membership, and then it suddenly drops off, and 6 months being the tipping point. Most operators see their new members drop off after around about 6 months. But we know if we can engage them in regular activity, if we can engage them in activity that they love to do, they are 88% more likely to still be active after 12 months. 93% of MVPs said their favourite activities make them more likely to continue with their membership. So this is the power of the activities that you provide and the power of group exercise. And it's not always just about Les Mills. So I'm here, I'm talking about Les Mills, it's our report, it's our finding. But if you can get them engaged in activities that they like, that they enjoy, that they have a sense of community, that they're engaging with like-minded individuals, they're more likely to continue with their membership and stay for longer. This one was the big one that stood out for me. So when we surveyed the clubs that were out there, and by the way, the 1,300 club operators that we surveyed, some were Les Mills customers, some weren't. We looked at a real cross-section of the industry. We compared clubs without MVP activities to clubs with MVP activities. They experienced 187% higher attrition rate than those without. So what this meant was many of the operators that were out there saw a much lower retention rate, and they were churning more members over an annual period than a club with those activities that engaged them on a regular basis. And MVPs visit their clubs 65% more than other members. So just as a recap, conscious that the video said it, but I don't think I said it at the start, when we looked at MVPs, the most valuable participants are those participants that are attending 2+ times a week or engaging in 2 group exercise classes every single week. So that's what it comes down to. Our tipping point when we speak to club operators out there, if you can get every single one of your members attending 2 visits per week, the likelihood of the length of stay increases from less than a year to 5 years plus. And that's what this report really highlights. So let's take a look at some of the stats. How do you win with your MVPs? This is the impact of Les Mills' yearly attendance when we compare it to others. So if we look at 2 different groups, if you look at a gym floor member, their total yearly visits is probably less than 40. That is on average. So if I said to you, okay, think about some of your members. Yes, some of your members are attending every single day. They're in at the same time every day, 6 days a week, training on the gym floor. But if you aggregate that and you look at those that don't attend, maybe they attend once a month, on average, the gym floor members attend less than 40 visits per year. So it's less than once a week. An average group training member is actually bang on 40 visits. So once again, those that attend regularly, those that don't, those that try. The one that really stood out to me was those that were engaged in Les Mills programming were attending around about 64 yearly visits on average. Now, some of those in terms of industry stats were up at 120 visits. Some were lower down at 40, but when we aggregate that out and average that out, the total yearly visits increased significantly. From a retention point of view, group class members have 43% lower attrition compared to, when we look at the Les Mills programming, have 52% lower attrition. So members will stay for longer if they're engaged in some of those Les Mills class activities. And length of stay being really important. That 39% longer, gym floor members will stay on average around about 16 months compared to Les Mills members that are around about 23 months. This for us was really, really compelling because we know when we get people engaged in regular, fun, engaging group exercise activity, not only do they stay longer, they're more likely to refer more people and they're more likely to make you a healthier business. And then the last one around lifetime value. What does this mean in terms of lifetime value? Gym floor members on average are valued at around about £893 per year. When we look at the Les Mills lifetime value, they're up at around about £1,100. So there's a significant lift in the value of those members engaging within our programs. So that's just some of the report findings and statistics. What I'd love to do now, though, is step into how do you make this work within your club? So that's the stats, that's the outcome, that's what you can achieve. Let's take a look at this in action. So what I'm going to do is talk you through 6 different actions that we found from working with club partners and industry partners that will help you achieve these goals. The first one is unleash latent capacity. So here's a quote from Dr. Paul Bedford, the retention guru, who was actually part of this conference this time last year as part of the retention convention. But Paul recommends this. The biggest thing for operators of all sizes is managing footfall, is ensuring they're signposting members to other areas of the club where they're able to service more people simultaneously, such as the group training studio. So Dr. Paul looks at the retention effect across many different club operators, looks at personal training, gym floor, group exercise, and unleashing latent capacity is one that we would recommend. Too many operators that we speak to out there have a group training studio that lies dormant for anywhere up to 80% of your opening hours. So for example, if you're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day and you're running 4 classes a day in that studio, you're underutilizing that space. How do you get more out of that space? How do you unleash the latent capacity by running more classes in those areas? So you're better off targeting prospects who will predominantly use the areas of the club where you still have capacity to fill. You're in a better position to meet the need of these prospects, so they're likely to stay longer and yield longer lifetime value. And this represents a better ROI for your marketing spend. So what Dr. Paul Bedford would recommend is review your current group exercise studio, review your operating hours, look at how many classes a week you run and can you run more. Now this doesn't necessarily always mean it has to be instructor-led classes, by the way. Virtual classes are a great way of engaging participants in off-peak time without the cost of the instructor that you would normally provide. So we've seen many operators out there offering virtual classes where you might only get 2 or 3 members in a class, but for the lifetime value of those members, you can't put a figure on it because at least they're engaging in regular activity. So look at your Group X studios, look at the space you have, offer more within that time. The second point is instructors will win your most valuable participants. Now, any instructor will tell you this story anecdotally, but here's a great quote from Erica Zaletta, the Vice President of Clubs from the Edge Fitness Clubs in the US. What they looked at is they hosted an intensive training session where personal trainers had the opportunity to learn from some of the Les Mills team before our PTs understood these new methods of coaching. And Les Mills opened it up. They were uncertain about how it could be relevant for them, but being able to hear what the science is behind our training and the extensive testing the working goes through even before launching really shifted the mindset. Around 90% of the instructors we certified in our first round across 13 clubs were personal trainers. And they've seen an exponential increase in attendance in those classes. So whereas before they had an instructor shortage, in most club operators that we speak to, and I'm talking about it later on today in this room, there is a real shortage of high quality instructors available for operators to utilize within their clubs. Pre-pandemic, there was a real dearth of instructors that were out there in the freelance world that were teaching as hobbyists. The pandemic has dropped that off. You can no longer find the high quality instructors. So many operators are struggling to fill the class schedules. So could you look at providing training for personal trainers? Could you bring personal trainers into the group training space with programming that works for them? Science-backed training or training that they would love to deliver. And we've worked with a number of operators, predominantly, or in this example, the Edge Fitness Clubs in the US, that they really found this works. So how do you utilize the instructors that you have available to you? The third step, this is a quote from one of our partners in Dublin and Ireland, the Westwood Clubs, who are a high-end premium facility. Their biggest location in Clontarf Road in Dublin has 11,500 members. So it's an 11,500 member club. They have 12 locations in Dublin, 8 locations in Ireland, sorry, and vary anywhere from 4,000 all the way through to 11,500 members. And Luke, when we spoke to Luke, the member experience manager at the Clontarf Road, said that they were targeting new members. So whereas you see that drop off after around about 3 months, the Westwood Clubs target new members, especially those who are on their first fitness journey. They made classes accessible and they used what we term the Smart Start principle to support with that. So what that looks like is when a new member comes into a group training class for the first time, rather than saying you need to stay for the full 60 minutes, we encourage them to stay for the first 20 minutes and then step out. So they don't have to do the full thing. They can come along, stay for 20 minutes, then step out. Then week 2, they stay for 25 minutes. Week 3, 30 minutes. So you're adding progressive steps. So those people that say, I'd love to do that group training class, but I'm not fit enough yet, or worse still, I'll go to that class when I'm fit enough, kind of an oxymoron there, you create the stepping stones and the pathways to do it. And they do this really, really well within the Westwood Clubs. So if after 20 minutes they feel like they've had enough, it's okay to leave. What we generally tend to find, though, is just giving the members that permission to leave is enough to get them through the door. And in most cases, they'll stay longer than the 20 minutes. The instructor is informed of this, informs the members beforehand. If they're brand new, they'll have a word and say it's okay if you need to step out after around about 20 minutes or so. But it empowers the member to make their own choice. And what that does, it takes away the barrier of that class is too hard, I can't last long enough, all of the anxiety that comes with attending a class for the first time that many new members feel, but us in the industry don't appreciate or take for granted because we've done it for so long and we love it and it's amazing, and why wouldn't you go to a class? We take away some of those psychological barriers straight away by allowing members to come through with strong onboarding. The fourth one, it's kind of a no-brainer this, but when we break it down, you'll see why we've included it. Offer workouts that your members cannot live without. So here is the example from the fitness and lifestyle group, again from the US, and Nicole gave us a great testimonial. We launched our ceremony program. Now, Les Mills Ceremony is our functional circuit-based program. So we've been running circuit training for years. In fact, over 30 or 40 years in some of our New Zealand clubs, up to 300 people in a room doing circuit training. But we've created the concept known as Les Mills Ceremony. And they introduced Les Mills Ceremony into the lifestyle and fitness clubs. And classes are averaging around about 71%, well above the regional group training average of 55%. At Balaclava, which opened just last week, attendance is already at 53%, despite the proximity to the holiday season. Now, the key point is this: members love the community vibe, the challenge it offers, and the unique coaching style that creates more of an immersive and inclusive experience. Now, if we take out the Les Mills programming and take out Les Mills Ceremony here, two things I want you to focus on. Number one is the community vibe. How do you create a sense of community? When you create community within group exercise classes, there's a sense of belonging, a sense of loyalty, and there's also a degree of accountability to the people that are attending. There's nothing worse than, oh, I didn't see you in the class on Tuesday, where were you? And then that person says, oh, I feel really guilty. I couldn't make it, there was an issue. You want to get there because other people will be working out with you. You want to be part of that community. The second thing is the challenge that it offers. Now, be wary of this. If you look back to the last point on smart onboarding, some of our other research, which I spoke about last year here, when we look at habit stacking, we found that around about 68% of new joiners find the word challenge off-putting to joining a fitness facility because of the nature of the intensity, because of the lack of experience, because of the fear of being not fit enough. Challenge is actually a really bad word to use when it comes to new member experiences. However, in the right space, with the right community, in the right environment, challenge can be really, really powerful to new members coming on board. So how do you engage? Offer them workouts they can't live without. They can't miss the community, and they feel like they need to attend. Number 5, how do you create more paths to the studio? And this doesn't mean restructuring what you do and creating a yellow brick road from the entrance all the way to the studio. But what it means is, how do you create more of a way of people moving from the gym floor or personal training into group exercise? And this is from Christina Puglia, again, National Group Fitness Manager of the Fitness and Lifestyle Group. Historically, our classes were predominantly attended by a static demographic. We didn't fully represent the community that we serve. When we started with partnership with Les Mills, we had 10% of our members taking part in group exercise. In less than a year, it rose to 14%, and we're gunning for 20%. This is how they did it. They wanted to attract a broader demographic, including younger participants, men and individuals from various ethnic backgrounds. And it's been a game changer for our bottom lines and improves the ROI of investing in high quality group fitness programs. Now, what that quote is talking about is, how are you engaging more people by varying your offering? Offer something different. Too many operators that we speak to have the same class schedule with the same instructors in the same time slot they've been running for 10, 15, even 20 years. About 18 months ago, I visited a club and I went into their group exercise studio. The schedule had been the same, the instructors had been the same, and what indicated this better than ever was their audio system in the corner of the room still had a tape deck that was still being utilized by the instructors that were teaching in that studio. Not Bluetooth, not CDs even, it was a tape deck that they were still using to teach classes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean remove all of those instructors, remove that schedule, but think about how to offer something different, something new, something fresh, something exciting. Attract a new demographic. Another piece of key insight is that we speak to operators that say, our timetable's full, our timetable's busy, it's really, really popular. But when we think about this here, this operator was only at 10% of their usage. When we look at some of the operators that we speak to, 50% of their overall usage are attending group exercise classes on a regular basis. Now, what that means is, if they're attending 2 times a week and you have 2,000 members, that's 2,000 visits to group exercise in your location. If you're running 40 classes a week with a 20 capacity studio, you cannot cope with the demand that you're creating there. So how do you need to build bigger studios, bigger spaces, but that comes with creating the demand. But you can't do that if you're attracting the same members going to the same classes every single week, because it just becomes a service provision for a smaller minority. So really for them, this operator, they created more paths by offering more diverse programming, attracting different audiences, younger participants, men and people from a different various ethnic background by varying the offering. So that's what we're talking about here. How do you vary the offering to create more opportunity for people to attend? And number 6, I kind of alluded to it before, but think about designing your studio experience. So we work really closely with operators. It's the first line there, I didn't mean to say it that way, but we work really closely with many operators on studio design. It's something that we're not actually known for, but we do with a lot of operators. And how we do that is we help them redesign the right training spaces to really maximize the potential for their studios. So, I mentioned before, I've worked in the industry for a long time, and the standard for a group exercise studio 30-ish years ago when I first started was a room probably not dissimilar to the size of this one, maybe half the size of this one, sprung-loaded floors, mirrors on 3 walls, and ballet bars coming around the side. That was the standard for a group exercise studio. Why? It was migrated from the dance studio craze. So from ballet studios into dance studios, was created into aerobic studios, which then became group exercise studios. But it's become the norm. And when an architect builds a group exercise studio now, it's almost the blueprint that they go to. What we found is that 3 of those things, ballet bars absolutely being a non-necessity, but sprung-loaded floors and mirrors are not a necessity in a group exercise studio anymore. In fact, creating a dynamic, well-lit experience with great sound, with great lighting, is more powerful than a room full of mirrors. In fact, mirrors are being one of the biggest factors why people don't attend group exercise classes, because of the fear factor of seeing themselves in the mirror. You've all got it. You all know if you step into a room, there's fat mirrors and thin mirrors, you know, ones that you look great in and ones that you don't look so great in. It's the same thing in group exercise classes. It's for participants. And when your existing members or regular members say, I love the mirrors in the studio, that says more about them than the wider experience. In many of our studios, particularly our clubs in New Zealand, we have no mirrors in our studios whatsoever. Yet we have 300 people working out in the space on a regular basis. So we help many operators change this space. So they replace their traditional group fitness studios, which we alluded to before, with athletic studios, featuring black walls, industrial style lighting, and open training zones. What this does, it opens the appeal to a younger demographic, and also it opened the appeal to more men. At Richmond, the ceremony program there had 65% of attendees being men, and the average participant is 34, which is significantly younger than the rest of our classes. I was fortunate enough to launch the first ceremony studio in the UK, and I worked with a club operator where we created a multi-purpose studio space. So they developed the studio to launch ceremony. Half of it was rubber flooring, half of it was turf. We sectioned out the areas, had functional equipment in there as well. But they wanted to utilize the space for not only the functional ceremony classes, but also for body pump and body combat classes, and even things like Pilates. Now, I don't know about you, working out on a floor of turf isn't exactly the most comfortable of experiences. And then you try and do that with Pilates participants, particularly some of the ladies of a certain age, it doesn't always go down too well. But what they did really well is they communicated why they're changing the studio. They communicated why some of the changes occurred, and it's become their most popular studio within their club. They've got 4 studios, become their most popular studio. Simply by changing the way that it looked and it felt, and it felt fresher, it felt different, it felt like a vibrant, exciting space to work out in. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at how to attract more members, the simplest thing to do is look at your studio design. Look at how the decor is currently laid out. Look at the lighting that you use. Lighting being the most inexpensive way of changing the look and feel of a studio without ripping out the mirrors or ripping up the floor. You can change the lighting very, very cost effectively. But designing that studio experience really creates that space for MVPs or high value participants to attend. Also grow your MVPs with choice. Now, this is from Sophie Brown. Gym 64 is an independent operator based in Dunfermline in Scotland, and we work really closely with them on how they change the look and feel of their studios, but also looked at their programming. So Sophie takes a helicopter view of the week, and they design their timetable horizontally from there. So I'll talk about this later in terms of timetable growth. What we recommend is when you look at a timetable, think horizontally and not vertically. So let me explain what I mean. Most club operators have a timetable up and they'll have Monday through Friday, they'll have times down the side, and then they'll look at the classes they run on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, we recommend that when you're creating a timetable, think about it in time zones, so horizontally across the week. I don't know about you, but I train in the gym most mornings, 5:30, 6 a.m. So I'm looking early morning classes. I have no idea what's going on in the evening. So I'll look, if the timetable is laid out, I'll look across the top. I think it's the next slide, actually. Let me show you there. There we go. So I'll look across here to see what's being offered, rather than what many operators do. They say, what do we run on a Monday? What do we run on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? So zone out your timetable. Schedule it out. So mornings, mid-morning, lunchtime, evening. And then look across this time slot and think, what can I offer across that time slot? What we recommend is that you offer one quality strength program, one quality cardio program, and one quality mind-body program in each time slot across the day, across the week. Because if you've got people that come early morning, for me, I'd want to go maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'd want strength on a Monday, I want a cardio on a Wednesday, and some form of recovery or mind-body on a Friday. And most people think like that when they think of their schedule. It's the same way they split their routine. So think horizontally, not vertically on a timetable. If I go back to Sophie. So if you come in at 6 p.m, you're getting something different every day. They benchmark their visits year on year. At the beginning of the year, they looked at what they could do to drive more footfall. In the last 12 months, one of our sites increased group fitness attendance by 50%, while the others have grown by 30%. We set out to achieve these targets by ensuring we offer a broad mix of programming so our members have choice. So think about how you schedule your timetable. Look at it in this sort of view, change the layout, put it into a grid format, and move the classes around based on what you could potentially offer. You then have a challenge of instructors that are available at those times, but that's a nice problem to have if you get the programming right for the members that are attending. And the last one is around marketing. So this is from Martin Seibold, the CEO of LifeFit Group. So they are the biggest gym brand in Germany. They run Fitness First. They run a number of other smaller franchise businesses as well. But when Martin looks at how marketing makes a big difference to their business, he was quoted by saying, we want to maintain our current retention level of 80%, doing really well as a business. So we've decided to focus out on our studios because we can facilitate a lot more people in our classes. Studios are the central pillar of their growth strategy. The investment is small compared to the returns that we see if we can keep our retention rate high. So we see group training as offering a great return on investment. So what they do now is they really do market every single program, every single class across their club through their social and digital channels. And they're looking at increasing their spend through marketing. And once again, marketing is a really cost-effective way of increasing participation if you get it right. So there's 8 key points, 8 key action plans. I'm going to open the floor because I thought we would have some.